The quiet ones. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the familiar rhythm of 1,000 civilizations conducting business. Holographic displays flickered across crystalline walls, showing trade routes, diplomatic agreements, and the endless small wars that defined the outer reaches. Queen Levane of the Serene Dominion sat in her observation box, mandibles clicking softly as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Then the chamber fell silent. New species detected, the Council Arbiter announced, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Classification, Death World origin. Species designation, human. Home system, Sol. They request diplomatic recognition. The chamber erupted, not in fear, in laughter. Levane watched as the hologram materialized, showing a small yellow star with 8 planets and 1 Death World third from the sun. The human delegation appeared, bipedal, soft-skinned, ridiculously fragile-looking. They wore simple uniforms of navy blue, their faces carefully neutral as thousands of species examined them like specimens in a laboratory. They've barely colonized their own moon properly. Ambassador Thex of the Kree sovereignty sneered, his scales rippling with amusement. 3 colonies. 3. My youngest hatchling commands more territory. Their ships are ancient, added a Vorlian military analyst. Fusion drives. Kinetic weapons. They're still using chemical propulsion for planetary launches. It's adorable. Around the chamber, empires calculated. The Terran Republic of Sol sat at the intersection of 6 major trade routes, possessed 3 habitable worlds in nearby systems, and, most importantly, appeared completely defenseless. Within hours, secret meetings began. Within days, invasion plans crystallized. But Levane couldn't shake the feeling crawling beneath her exoskeleton. She pulled up the human diplomatic files, studying them obsessively. Their ambassador, a middle-aged woman named Chen, had given a short speech to the council. Polite, measured. She'd spoken of peace, cooperation, mutual benefit, all the standard phrases new species used when they were terrified. But her eyes. Levane replayed the footage again. Ambassador Chen's eyes never wavered, never showed fear. They held something else, something patient, something that made Levane's instincts honed through 1,000. Generations of predatory evolution scream warnings her. Conscious mind couldn't interpret. You're being paranoid, her military advisor hissed. They're Deathworlders, yes, but look at their fleet. 20 capital ships, 20. We have 6,000. Levane clicked her mandibles in acknowledgement but kept digging. Human culture files. Art. Music. Literature. She found herself drawn into their creations. Beautiful, haunting pieces about love and loss, triumph and tragedy. Their music made her weep, something she'd never experienced with alien art before. Their poetry spoke of depth she recognized in her own soul. Then she found their war history. Every species had wars. It was how intelligence evolved, competing for resources. But human wars were different. Levane read about conflicts that consumed entire continents, weapons that could crack worlds, philosophies of total annihilation. She read about Hiroshima, about Dresden, about the Somme. She read casualty numbers that made galactic wars look like skirmishes. But what froze her compound eyes was a single document, a speech given by a human leader named Churchill during something called the Second World War. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. They'd written poetry about refusing to surrender. Military intelligence, she commanded, her voice tight. Pull all available data on Terran fleet movements, everything. The files appeared. Standard patrol patterns, diplomatic missions, cargo transports. Nothing unusual. But then her analyst highlighted something in the background of a fleet photograph. A ship that appeared in 17 different images across 3 months. Always at the edge of frame, always slightly out of focus. Enhance, Levane ordered. The image clarified. The ship was wrong. Not aesthetically, it was beautiful in a predatory way, but wrong on a fundamental level. Its hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Its proportions defied standard engineering. Most disturbing. Every sensor reading within 10,000 kilometers of it showed nothing but static. What classification is that? She demanded. According to Terran diplomatic files, Shadow Step class designation, TRS Silent Prayer. But there's no technical data. No specifications. No operational parameters. How many do they have? A pause. We don't know. The only reason we spotted this one is because a human officer accidentally included it in a background shot. There could be one. There could be hundreds. Sensors can't track them. Levane felt her blood chill. A ship designed to be invisible to sensors. A species that wrote poetry about never surrendering. A diplomatic delegation that showed no fear when confronted by thousands of superior civilizations. She sent urgent messages to every intelligence contact she had. Most dismissed her concerns. A few sent back troubling reports. Human ships conducting strange exercises in deep space. Civilian freighters with military-grade engines. Diplomatic installations that consumed more power than their stated functions required. Then the Kree sovereignty announced its invasion plan. 6 fleets, overwhelming force. The humans would be given one chance to surrender their territory and accept Kree governance. When they refused, and everyone knew they would refuse, the Kree would demonstrate the cost of defying galactic power. The chamber celebrated. Finally, some entertainment. A quick war against primitives, then a redistribution of valuable territory. Only Levane sat silent, studying that photograph of the Shadow Step class. Studying Ambassador Chen's patient, dangerous eyes. Remembering human poetry about beautiful things, love, hope, children laughing, written by the same species that had invented weapons capable of ending worlds. This is a mistake, she whispered to her advisor. They're too quiet. Too calm. They're terrified, her advisor replied. They just hide it well. But Levane knew predators, knew the difference between fear and focus. And as 6 Kree fleets assembled at the border of Terran space, as gambling pools opened across the galaxy to bet on how quickly humanity would fall, Levane sent a coded message to her home fleet. Prepare defensive positions. Something is coming. She didn't know what, not yet. But she trusted the instinct that had kept her species alive for millennia. The instinct that recognized something humanity had spent their entire diplomatic mission carefully, perfectly hiding. The humans weren't afraid of the galaxy. The galaxy should have been afraid of them. The crossing. The Kree Armada assembled at Designation Point Triumph. 6 full fleets. Over 1,800 warships gleaming in the light of a dying red star. Admiral Krath stood on the bridge of the Dominance, his scales flushed with the deep purple of anticipated victory. Around him, holographic displays showed the formations, hammer and anvil, a strategy that had conquered 47 species in the last century alone. Sensors confirmed Terran border defenses, his tactical officer reported. 23 stations. Minimal shielding. Kinetic point defense only. They're not even powered up to combat readiness. Krath's laugh rumbled through the bridge. They think we're bluffing. Maintain formation. We cross in 1 hour. The humans will see our might and, sir, incoming transmission. Human diplomatic frequency. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on screen. She looked tired. Her hair, Krath noted with amusement, had traces of gray that humans didn't bother to alter. So primitive they accepted aging as natural. Admiral Krath, she said quietly, I urge you to reconsider this action. Turn your fleets around. There's still time to resolve this diplomatically. You are outgunned 900 to 1, Krath replied. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Surrender your territory. Accept Kree governance and your species will be spared. Chen was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that would be replayed across the galaxy for generations. She smiled. Not a diplomatic smile. Something sad and ancient. Admiral, do you know what we call our homeworld, Earth? Do you know what it means in our oldest languages? Ground, soil, the thing you stand on. She leaned forward slightly. We named our planet Dirt because that's what we crawled out of. We didn't evolve on a paradise world. We evolved in the mud, fighting for every scrap, every breath, every moment of survival. And we got very good at fighting. Threats from not a threat. A courtesy, a final warning from one intelligence to another. Her eyes, those patient, dangerous eyes, locked onto his. Do not cross our border, Admiral. Because if you do, we will show you what Death World evolution really means. The transmission ended. Krath's bridge crew shifted uncomfortably. Then someone laughed nervously and the tension broke. The human woman was trying psychological warfare. How desperate. How pathetic. All fleets, Krath commanded. Advance. 1,800 ships crossed into Terran space. For 17 minutes nothing happened. The Kree fleets maintained formation, accelerating toward the first human station. Point defense systems came online, weak, outdated systems that posed no real threat. A few human ships appeared on sensors, tiny corvettes that immediately began retreating. "They're running," someone said with satisfaction. Then Krath's sensor officer made a sound no Kree should make. A sound of pure primal fear, sir. Sensor contact, no. Multiple contacts. No, that's not. Sir, the readings don't make sense. Space folded. That was the only way Krath's mind could process it. Reality seemed to ripple, and suddenly there were ships where no ships had been. Not behind them, that would have been explainable. Not beside them, that would have been tactical. The human ships appeared inside the Kree formation, materialized between the flagships, emerged from nowhere like predators stepping out of shadows. Shadow step class. 73 of them. They weren't ships in the traditional sense. They were gaps in space shaped like vessels, moving in ways that violated physics. One moment empty space, the next moment a sleek skeletal destroyer sitting 300 meters from a Kree battleship. How? Krath began. The humans fired, but not weapons. Not in any sense the galaxy understood. The Shadow Step vessels released something that later analysts would struggle to classify. Exotic matter, contained singularities, weaponized quantum uncertainty. The effect was immediate and absolute. Kree shields didn't fail. They simply ceased to exist, along with the fundamental forces holding them together. Hulls didn't rupture. They unmade themselves at the molecular level. The dominance shook. Krath watched his tactical display in horror as 30 capital ships simply stopped. Their power signatures flatlined. Their lights went dark. Life support failed. Thousands of Kree warriors dying in the cold of space, not from explosions or fire, but from the sudden absence of the forces that kept matter cohesive. Return fire. All ships return. Another wave of Shadow Step vessels materialized. This time they appeared directly in front of fleeing Kree destroyers, motionless, forcing the Kree ships to collide with them. Except the collisions never happened. The instant before impact, the human ships shifted, not moving through space but stepping out of it and back in somewhere else, and the Kree vessels found themselves crashing into each other instead. It was masterful, horrifying. The humans weren't fighting a battle. They were conducting a symphony of controlled chaos, using the Kree's own momentum and formations against them. "Retreat," Krath ordered. "All fleets emergency." "Sir, we can't. They're in front of us, behind us, all around us. Sensors show them in 17 places simultaneously." "That's not possible. Fire everything." The Kree armada opened up with every weapon they had. Plasma cannons, missiles, railguns, energy beams. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The space between stars lit up with unleashed fury, and the humans dodged. Not with speed. Not with shields. They simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. Ships that existed in normal space 1 microsecond would exist somewhere else the next, leaving Kree weapons to detonate an empty void or, more frequently, to hit other Kree vessels as formations collapsed into confusion. Levane watched from her command center 3 light-years away, her compound eyes wide with horror and unwilling admiration. Her sensors team had managed to capture some of the battle through long-range gravitational detection. "They're not dodging," her science officer whispered. "They're stepping, moving between dimensions, existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously, and collapsing into whichever state keeps them safe." "That's not technology, that's impossible." "Clearly not," Levane replied, her voice hollow. "The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 43 minutes. Of 1,800 Kree warships, 17 survived. They survived because the humans let them survive, shepherding them back across the border like predators toy with prey before deciding whether to kill or release. When the battered remnants of the Kree armada limped back to galactic space, they carried a message. Every ship's communication system and every language spoken by every species in the galaxy displayed the same text. "You were warned. You crossed anyway. This is mercy. There will not be a second demonstration. Humanity claims Sol and its surrounding systems as sovereign territory. Any violation of our borders will be met with absolute response. We do not seek war, but we will end any war brought to us. We are the Terran Republic. We crawled up from the dirt. And we are very, very good at survival. Do not make us show you what else we learned in the mud. The galaxy fell silent. The new rules. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours. Every major species sent their highest representatives. The chamber, usually filled with the casual arrogance of established powers, now thrummed with barely controlled panic. Impossible. The Vorlian Defense Minister's translation came through sharp and brittle. Our analysts have reviewed the combat footage. What they're describing violates the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, conservation of energy, causality itself. Ships cannot exist in quantum superposition at macro scale. And yet, Queen Levane said quietly from her observation box, they do. The holographic display at the chamber's center showed the battle again. Slowed down, enhanced, analyzed from every angle. Military theorists from 100 species had spent days studying it. Their conclusions were unanimous and terrifying. Humanity had broken physics, or found a way to exploit gaps in reality that no other species had imagined possible. The question, Ambassador Thex hissed, his earlier mockery replaced by cold calculation, is how many Shadow Step vessels they possess. We saw 73. If that's their entire fleet, it's not, interrupted a Sereni intelligence officer, mandibles clicking nervously. Our deep space observation posts have been reviewing historical data. We've found evidence of Shadow Step signatures going back 8 months, across 47 different systems. Always at the edges, always watching. The conservative estimate is 300 vessels. The realistic estimate, he paused, we don't know. They could have thousands. Silence. Then we mobilize, the Kree war leader snarled, his scales still flushed dark with humiliation. Every species, every fleet. They can't stand against the entire galaxy united, can't they? Levane's voice cut through the rising murmur. They didn't destroy the Kree fleets. They toyed with them. Disabled ships without killing crews when they easily could have caused total annihilation. They sent you back alive with a message. She stood, her height commanding attention. This wasn't humanity showing us their limits. This was humanity showing us their restraint. You're suggesting we do nothing? The Vorlian minister's translation dripped with contempt. I'm suggesting we think. Levane activated her personal display, projecting data across the chamber. I've spent 3 months studying humanity. Every file, every transmission, every scrap of culture we've captured. Do you know what I found? A species that spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, not as a necessity of survival. They won that battle millennia ago. They perfected it as an art form. She pulled up human historical records. They have texts on warfare older than most of our civilizations. The Art of War. On War. The Book of 5 Rings. They wrote philosophical treatises about conflict, studied it the way we study physics or mathematics. And unlike us, unlike every species in this chamber, they fought each other. For their entire history, humans have been at war with other humans. So they're fractured, someone suggested hopefully. We could exploit— No. Levane's voice was sharp. You don't understand. They fought each other for millennia and survived it. They know every trick, every strategy, every psychological manipulation warfare can offer because they've used them all on themselves. And then, she pulled up more recent human history. They stopped. 200 years ago, they unified. Every nation, every tribe, every faction joined together into the Terran Republic. Do you know how rare that is? How impossible? She looked around the chamber. We haven't unified. The Kree sovereignty controls through force. The Vorlian collective maintains peace through economic interdependence. The Sereni Dominion rules through tradition. But humanity? They chose unity. Which means when they came to us, when Ambassador Chen spoke of peace and cooperation, she wasn't speaking for a fragmented species hoping for protection. She was speaking for a species that had already conquered its most dangerous enemy, itself. The implications settled over the chamber like frost. What do you propose? The council arbiter's voice was uncharacteristically subdued. We accept their terms, Levane said. We recognize their sovereignty. We respect their borders. And we learn from this. Learn what? Ambassador Thex demanded. To fear primitives? To recognize what we're dealing with. Levane pulled up the image of the Shadow Step vessel again. Every species in this galaxy evolved on paradise worlds or near paradise worlds. Yes, we had predators. We had competition. But we had enough. Enough food, enough water, enough space. We evolved intelligence to manage abundance. She paused, letting her next words land with full weight. Humans evolved intelligence to survive scarcity. They lived on a world that actively tried to kill them. Predators faster than them, stronger than them, more numerous than them. Weather that could freeze or burn. Diseases that decimated populations. And worst of all, other humans competing for the same limited resources. They didn't develop space travel because they wanted to explore. They developed it because their planet was running out of room and resources. They went to space because they had no choice. And now they have shadow step technology, the Arbiter said quietly, which they developed in secret while smiling and nodding at our diplomatic meetings, Levane confirmed. While we laughed at their primitive fusion drives, they were building ships that make our best stealth technology look like a signal flare. While we mocked their small territory, they were quietly mapping every system within 50 light years. And while we prepared invasion fleets, they were waiting. She pulled up Ambassador Chen's final transmission to Admiral Krath, freezing on that sad, ancient smile. They gave us a warning, a final courtesy, and we ignored it. Now we know the cost of ignoring humanity. The debate raged for 3 more hours, but the outcome was inevitable. One by one, species recognized what Levane had seen from the beginning. Humanity wasn't a primitive civilization to be exploited. They were something new to the galaxy, something that had learned survival in the hardest school existence offered. The resolution passed with near unanimity. The Terran Republic's borders would be recognized, their sovereignty guaranteed. Trade agreements would be negotiated on equal terms, not as superior to primitive, but privately, in secure channels. Military commands across the galaxy began new directives. Study human warfare. Understand human psychology. Learn everything possible about this species that had rewritten the rules of engagement. Levane requested a private communication with Ambassador Chen 2 days later. The human woman appeared on screen looking as tired as ever. Queen Levane, how can I help you? I wanted to apologize, Levane said carefully, for not speaking loudly enough against the invasion, for not trusting my instincts when they warned me something was wrong. Chen's expression softened slightly. You tried. We monitored the council proceedings. You were one of the few voices of caution. Why didn't you just show us the shadow step technology from the beginning? Demonstrate your capabilities before anyone thought to attack? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried that same ancient patience. Because we wanted to see who you were. Which species would see neighbors? Which would see prey? She leaned forward slightly. We needed to know if the galaxy was ready for us. If there was any chance for actual peace, or if we'd have to fight for every meter of space forever. And what did you learn? That most of the galaxy thinks like every human civilization did before we unified. That strength means dominance. That differences mean threats. That peace is just the pause between wars. Chen's eyes, those patient, dangerous eyes, held Levane's. But also that there are species like yours. Species that question, that hesitate, that choose wisdom over ambition. The shadow step vessels, Levane said carefully. How many do you really have? Chen smiled that sad smile again. Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. Because the real question isn't how many ships we have. It's whether the galaxy can learn to live with a species that refuses to be conquered, refuses to conquer others, but will absolutely end any threat to our survival. She paused. We don't want to be your enemies, Queen Levane. We don't want to be your masters. We just want to be left alone to grow and explore and exist. But if forced to choose between extinction and war, her voice hardened. We will choose war. And we will win. Not because we're better than you, because we've had 10,000 years more practice. After the transmission ended, Levane sat in silence for a long time. Then she pulled up humanity's cultural files again, searching for something specific. She found it in an ancient Earth text, a poem from their pre-space era. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage. Rage against the dying of the light. The humans had written poetry about refusing death itself. The galaxy had treated them like prey. But prey doesn't write poetry about never surrendering. Prey doesn't develop weapons that break physics. Prey doesn't give warnings before demonstrating overwhelming force. The galaxy had made a mistake. A nearly catastrophic mistake. They'd seen humans as weak because they were small, as primitive because they were polite, as prey because they seemed vulnerable. But there's a reason apex predators can afford to be calm. A reason the most dangerous creatures can afford to be patient. A reason true power doesn't need to constantly prove itself. Humanity had tried to join the galaxy peacefully, had offered friendship, trade, cooperation, and the galaxy had responded with invasion plans and exploitation schemes. The Shadow Step demonstration wasn't revenge. It wasn't even really a warning. It was an introduction. The galaxy was learning new rules now. Rules written by a species that crawled up from dirt and refused to ever go back down. Rules that said, approach with respect or don't approach at all. Seek peace and find friends. Seek war and find out why Death World evolution makes the best survivors. Levane composed a message to her military command. Update all strategic protocols. Humanity is not a threat to be managed. They are neighbors to be respected. Anyone who forgets this distinction answers to me personally. Then she opened a trade proposal file and began drafting cooperation agreements. Real ones. Equal partnerships. Because the galaxy had learned something it should never have needed a demonstration to understand. Sometimes the quietest ones are quiet because they don't need to shout. Sometimes the smallest territories are small because their owners know quality matters more than quantity, and sometimes, just sometimes, when a species says we come in peace, they mean it. But that doesn't mean they come defenseless. The humans had rewritten galactic politics with a single battle, had shown that all the old assumptions about power and territory and strength were just that. Assumptions. Wrong ones. The galaxy would adapt. It always did. Species would learn to work with humanity rather than against them. Trade would flourish. Friendships would form. In time, the Shadow Step demonstration would become history. A cautionary tale about underestimating the quiet ones. But on every military academy across 1,000 worlds, instructors would show footage of that battle, would point to those sleek, skeletal ships appearing from nowhere, would remind every cadet of a single crucial lesson. Never, ever underestimate a species from a death world, because they didn't survive their planet by being weak. They survived it by being terrifying.